that he sent also, which you could say. The letter.
Convene this May 5th, 2022 meeting of the Centerville Town Council. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and stay standing for a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Begin with a review of minutes from past meetings. The April 14th, 2022 budget work session is the first minutes in your package. Is there a motion to accept or any discussion?
Motion to accept.
Second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The second minutes in your packet are April 21st, 2022 meeting minutes.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Move into a closed session statement from April 21st, 2022. The Town Council met in closed session on Thursday, April 21st, 2022 at 8:10 p.m. at the Liberty Building, 107 North Liberty Street, second floor meeting room to discuss a personnel consult with council and the acquisition of real estate in accordance with Maryland Open Meetings Act. 5 members of the Town Council voted to close the session. The authority to close the session is found in Section 3-305 of the General Provisions article. The Town Council discussed the following topics: personnel. We discussed various staff members' performance during First Amendment audit. Legal advice. We requested legal advice on handling First Amendment audits. And the acquisition of real estate. Discussed the acquisition of real property for spray irrigation field for wastewater treatment plant upgrade. No actions were taken. The following members and staff were present: Stephen K. Klein, President; Jeffrey D. Keel, Vice President; Shelby C. Anania, Eric Johnson Jr., and Ashley H. Kaiser, members. Charles Chip Kugel, Town Manager, and Sharon Van Emberg, Town Attorney, were also present. The meeting adjourned at 8:27 p.m. With that, we will start with a citizens forum. Carolyn, do you want to read the citizens forum statement?
Welcome to this meeting of the Centerville Town Council. This is a public meeting and we welcome your participation. By attending, you acknowledge that this session is recorded and aired live on QAC-TV 7. During the meeting, we ask that you turn your cell phones off and hold personal conversations outside the meeting room. The scheduled agenda is available on the information table just outside. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The Town Council respects and appreciates your desire and right to convey your message freely, and in keeping with the dignity of proceedings, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. If questions are a part of your comments, we'll refer those to the appropriate individual. Thank you.
Any members of the public wishing to comment?
No one was signed up.
All right, we'll move into new business then. The first thing on the agenda is Murphy and Dittenhofer on the municipal building feasibility study, which folks have in their packet as well.
I will turn it over to our architects to brief the council. Over to you via Zoom.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Frank Dittenhafer. I'm the president of Murphy and Dittenhafer Architects. I'd just like to say it's been a real pleasure working with staff over the past few months, talking to them, interviewing them, looking at the existing facilities for your municipal office, and also looking at some options and sites for a new municipal campus that would accommodate all of the administrative functions and departments, the police, and also public works. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to one of my 2 colleagues, Blake Gifford, but also Nolan LeBlanc is with us tonight, who've both been working on the project from the start, and I'll let Blake kind of go through a sort of abridged summary of the report that you have.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bill Gifford. Good evening, Council. I believe if everybody is holding a copy of the feasibility study, then we should be good to just be able to sort of talk through it briefly, which we will do. We'll just sort of dive in and do a brief summary of our assessment of the existing conditions of the 3 sites that we've looked at as a part of the study, as well as just do a brief overview of our conceptual approaches for each, as well as the associated costs.
Blake, is there any way we could maybe get you closer to a microphone?
Oh, sure.
Having a hard time picking you up here in the room.
It may be an air conditioner that's on right behind me, so if you don't mind.
It's on his end.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
No, still not good.
Okay.
How about now?
Ooh, perfect.
Yep.
Good.
Okay. Must have been, what was that? Okay. There we go, slight shift. So if everyone can hear me now, we will just, assuming that everyone is holding a copy of the feasibility study in their hand, we should be good to just do this review. We'll just do a brief review of the 3 sites that we looked at as a part of the study, as well as the existing conditions, a sort of assessment of the existing conditions of each site, as well as a little bit more of an overview of our conceptual approach for each. So as an initial part of the feasibility study, we looked at exactly what the town of Centerville's needs were. We distributed a survey resource form and consulted with town staff as well to get a better, more detailed understanding of exactly what the program sort of programmatic needs were for each department of the municipal administration, including the administration offices, the human resources department, finance department, public works offices, the police department, including public spaces that would serve all these spaces, including a separate public works shop. That led to the creation of this very detailed list that you see in front of you that took into account proposed occupants for each space, quantity of spaces, and then a total proposed area for the sort of some group of spaces in each category. Sort of diving into the assessment of the existing conditions for each site, the first site that we looked at as a part of a feasibility study was sort of what we called the Board of Education site, or the Chesterfield Avenue site. The site itself is comprised of 2 different parcels, both zoned residential. This is positioned in a largely residential district on the north side of Centerville. And presently on the south portion of the site, there is an existing Board of Education facility, which as a portion of it includes an original 1901 historic building, historic resource, the actual original Centerville High School. So that certainly became a conceptual driver in the development of our concepts that show up later in the report. There are as well on the east side of sort of the lower east side of this site, smaller outbuildings that also serve the Board of Education. And the north side of the site is actually undeveloped and could, as is highlighted in the existing conditions plan, could potentially give way to sort of an access road to a future development that's on the north end of the site that could as well sort of seamlessly link with our conceptual development that we'll get into later in the study. The second site that we looked at as a part of this study was the Pennsylvania Avenue site, which is significantly more urban of the three sites. It's located just outside the central business district, and as such is a bit of a longer, narrower site in dimension. It unfortunately in our conceptual design was not able to accommodate all of the program that was highlighted in the original sort of assessment of the town's needs. It's mainly the public works shop, unfortunately, but we believe that there are a number of positives to this site in terms of contribution and engagement with historic heritage. This site itself was the historic site of a rail yard that served Centerville, over a century ago. There is existing infrastructure that is still present on the site that was involved and served the rail yard that could very well be utilized in addition to a sensible, efficient conceptual approach in terms of the execution of the municipal program. So the Pennsylvania Avenue site, again, a little bit different, tighter in dimension, certainly, but certainly yields a number of advantages all its own. The third site that we looked at as a part of this study is located on the south side of the town of Centerville, and is what we're calling the Vincent Street site, although it's located in the area of Vincent Street as well as John Andrews Boulevard and Route 304 or Ruthsburg Road. A number of benefits we saw from this site, including the establishment of what we believe is a bit of a campus context on the south side of Centerville. There is an existing Queen Anne's County government Vincent building, we believe it's called, as well as a construction site currently, multiple construction sites, one being that of a new facility for the Board of Education, as well as a new YMCA that will be going in the area as well. That, along with a pattern of development in Centerville that is, as we understand it, sort of moving to the east and southeast. We believe that this fits very well within that, as well as within the existing conditions currently present. So it is located a little bit more remotely from downtown Centerville, certainly. But again, there are a number of benefits that we find from this location, along with some of the existing facilities present on the site. So to dive into the conceptual approaches for each site beyond just our understanding of the existing conditions, starting with the Board of Education or Chesterfield Avenue site. One of the primary drivers for the layout of this building, the siting of this building, the massing of what we're proposing was based around the preservation of the sort of historic heritage within this site, which is the 1901 Centerville High School. That, in this conceptual approach, that facility, along with the historic front yard setback in front of the historic school off of Chesterfield Avenue is preserved. And along with that, we believe we effectively utilize the remainder of the site to execute the municipal program as was determined in the needs study. So we have an accessible public and administrative staff parking lot, including 55 spaces on the north side of the site and building, with a very clearly articulated access route for both the secure police department and a secure police department parking area and secured public works laydown and parking area as well. So just in terms of parking and general sizing and accommodations on the site, we believe the Board of Ed site can very easily accommodate it. So again, there is ample site area in terms of just pros and cons. There is again ample site area available for new building and site construction. There is site capacity available to accommodate the new public works shop and laydown areas. There is greater ease of vehicular access from multiple locations, the preservation of the historic Centerville High School, the preservation of the yard in front of the high school off of the street. The existing site area to the north as well could potentially be sold to offset future development costs as well. The general proximity to downtown Centerville, as well as the overall capacity for expansion as well, are a number of pros that we found for this site specifically. We have highlighted, though, as well, that there are potentially additional costs associated with the preservation of the Board of Ed building. Renovation complexities and hazardous materials included within that, and as well the potential abatement that could result. The sort of final cost, preliminary probable total project cost that we assembled for the approach to this site did come in at $21,720,064. Moving on to the conceptual approach for the second site, the Pennsylvania Avenue site. This was not just a single story approach. This involved multiple stories, specifically actually in the office wing, where there would be administrative offices, public spaces to access those, as well as the offices for the various municipal departments. The single story portion of this conceptual approach would be the police department. And we believe that with a sort of single story, two-story approach, we can fit everything that we need to and everything the town needs on this site, and also have some room for public and administrative staff parking, as well as secure parking for the police and access to their sally port. You'll see on the sort of plan left side of our conceptual site plan that there is as well acknowledgement of a potential historic plaza in no particular configuration that could be utilized to take advantage of some of the existing rail yard infrastructure on site. Just in terms of benefits that we saw on the Pennsylvania Avenue site specifically, it does have the lowest site and building development cost associated, largely given to the sort of tighter size of the site and the lack of the public works shop and laydown area. It does, we believe, complement the scale, or will complement the scale of the local and adjacent development. We are aware right across the street from this site is a series of buildings that were sort of designed very deliberately to achieve a relatively historic vernacular aesthetic that's present in downtown Centerville. So this conceptual approach would seek to remain sensitive to that. There is still ample site, despite the dimensions. There is still ample site available for a single-story police department and secure parking. There is, due to its proximity to the central business district, quite a high level of pedestrian accessibility and walkability. Certainly the most of the three sites that we assessed as a part of the study. There is also the benefit that we receive from the potential engagement with the adjacent historic context in the form of the rail yard turntable and potential historic park. In terms of disadvantages of the Pennsylvania Avenue site, it is, again, it does have a modest size, a narrow configuration, very sort of long and narrow. There is inadequate site to accommodate the public works shop. We understand that the public works shop is sort of well fit in its present location, but wrapping that part of the program into this new conceptual facility could present a benefit. So a lack of that certainly could present itself as a con. Fewer parking spaces are just going to be available on this site in this conceptual approach by its nature. And one relatively minor disadvantage is that we found that there is a existing bioswale on the site that would require modification should construction on this site of the approach proceed. So there is as well something that we noticed that could potentially be a disadvantage on this site, given its urban proximity, its relatively tight dimension. There is a potential risk of traffic congestion where police enter and exit the site, or the public enter and exit the site off of Pennsylvania Avenue and the adjacent streets. So the total probable total project cost that we assembled for this site was $16,660,990. just to highlight and move on and highlight the third site that we looked at, the Vincent Street site. So our approach for the Vincent Street site was relatively unique of the three because it is largely a greenfield site. It's undeveloped. It does not have any sort of existing context to sort of be sensitive to, and it gave us a little bit of freedom to place this in what we believe to be an ideal location within the parcel. So we are able to accommodate on the Vincent Street site all of the town of Centerville's needs, all of the municipal program in one single story approach. There was no second story necessary for any of this. So again, we are able to have a little bit more freedom, a little bit greater accessibility as well with the single story. We're able to as well accommodate the public and administrative staff parking areas, as well as the separate secure police and public works parking and laydown areas. The public works shop, given the extent and availability of land between these two parcels, is able to be accommodated in this scheme. So that is certainly an advantage as well. And we have the sort of primary site access coming off of John Andrews Boulevard to the north end of the site. There is a benefit we see from existing construction, a lot of existing traffic-related infrastructure having already been installed. So there is a certain amount of utilization of existing infrastructure that we benefit from on the Vincent Street site, certainly. Just to briefly highlight the pros and cons that we looked through on this Vincent Street site. It's again a relatively flat greenfield site, easily accommodates building construction and various site improvements. It does again have a campus-like setting with a number of existing facilities present very much nearby. Ample utility infrastructure is available nearby for connection to and use on the site. In a similar theme, the site location is near expanding residential and commercial development for the town of Centerville as well. So that is certainly an advantage. The ample site area available for new building and site construction, as well as the accommodation of future expansion, the public workshop, the laydown areas. I mean, this is certainly the site of the three that presents the greatest amount of freedom in terms of use, land use. There is as well, given the existing traffic infrastructure, vehicular infrastructure, a bit of a greater ease of vehicular access. We think multiple locations from which these different sites and pieces of the program can be accessed. This includes a potential future development as well. And then again, via Vincent Street and John Andrews Boulevard, we do have a lot of available access roads present and sort of ready to accommodate a new construction. In terms of disadvantages for the Vincent Street site, this is a remote location from the central business district. It certainly doesn't have the pedestrian accessibility and walkability of the Pennsylvania Avenue site and perhaps even in a way the Board of Education site. It as well requires the consideration of the placement of a new water tower, which is a relatively small size. It's not certainly a major disadvantage, but it's a part of what needs to be accommodated. The higher traffic volume due to the adjacent vehicular road and street network. There is, because of the addition to this, the conceptual addition to this site, as well as what we are aware of to be a relatively complicated traffic situation with the adjacent high school. There could well involve the necessity of a traffic study for this conceptual approach, given the context and location of the Vincent Street site. So as well, there is a potential risk of smaller areas, I guess, of traffic congestion as well, just at these various access points, and given the concerns with the traffic at the adjacent parcels as well. So for the Vincent Street site, the probable total project cost that we reached was $21,684,754. And that really does take us to the end of the meat of the study, but we are all present and available to answer questions and provide any more detail that you guys would need. So,
Thank you, Blake. I'll start with just asking about the current site of the Public Works Yard and where the police department is. Was there any attempt to look at that space and see if it could accommodate the full campus style, since the Public Works Yard is already there?
that site was not looked at as a part of the study. We did do an existing conditions assessment of the facilities that the town does currently have ownership of and is currently utilizing. But beyond that, just sort of understanding what was there and how big and how much, we did not look at that site potentially for conceptual development.
Any other questions from council?
Yeah, I have one. I think this is an excellent product, so first of all, thank you for that. One of the things I just noticed in a price comparison, when I just did some quick math on the total new construction costs, what I came up with was $9.45 million for the Board of Ed, $9.6 million for Pennsylvania Avenue, and $10.5 million for Vincent Site. And I guess my question would be, the Board of Ed number for new building construction is very close to the Pennsylvania Avenue one, so 9.45 versus 9.6. And so with the Board of Ed site, there is the renovation of the oldest portion of the building, the historic building. And so I guess I just would have figured that once that site's renovated and provides a certain amount of square footage for administrative space, that the total new construction cost might be less than that. So can you just talk through, just why those two numbers are so close?
Frank, if you'd like to, wasn't sure if you'd like to start.
Yeah, I think the basic answer is that the total square footage is very similar. I mean, that's, I think, in the Board of Ed site, there's demolition of an existing structure, and then there is renovation of a portion of an existing structure. There's a little bit of some offsetting costs, and a little similar, maybe beyond that, sort of site development costs. The Vincent Street site is, again, everything is new, no demolition, no renovations, but probably more infrastructure costs. So again, we didn't go into any of these sites and try to, cook any numbers that they turn out higher or lower. If they're similar, it's purely by coincidence, and maybe different reasons. Like I'm sort of trying to articulate why they in the end might be relatively close on certain aspects.
I guess when I was looking at the specific line items, the renovation of that original school structure, the Centerville High School, clearly is not going to be a cheap option, but just that in and of itself. So that was segregated out in the pricing that you guys indicated. So then the new construction specifically, that number it's almost like the square footage available in the historic structure. If you took that out, the price is still sort of very close to what just the new construction portion of the Pennsylvania Avenue site is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think that again, at this very early conceptual level, the cost per square foot that we were using for any new construction on any site, just basic new, is the same. What was it, $350 a square foot, Blake?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah,
it was,
the same allowance in terms of just the building construction, new building construction on any site, the same square foot cost allowance was used.
Anyone else? You have more?
Yeah, I appreciate that answer.
Okay, thank you all very much, and we will move on to personnel manual. So, Crystal?
Well,
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming on. Blake, nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Where do we stand? Do we know where we stand with what the county is going to do with the Board of Education? Has that become any clearer?
No. It has not. There's been it waffles. It goes back and forth. There's a plethora of ideas. The consistent answer is that they want the building to stay, the historic building to stay, at least that part of it, whether it's renovated. And then they've also talked about some sort of space reserved within inside of it for
The alumni. The
yeah,
alumni.
the alumni kind of room, kind of a museum with artifacts and things of that nature. But other than it, I've heard that, hey, Board of Ed is looking at continuing education programs and things of that nature, and then that kind of waffles off, and then it comes back to it. So that is a, yeah, that's, I think it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And point of fact is the Board of Ed still occupies the building, and we're years away from them building a new.
In terms of the sort of town staff recommendation, I mean, at this early point, where would your druthers be here?
So I've heard different things from people. One is that they would like the town hall and the town facilities to remain near the central business district, if not inside of it. Pennsylvania Avenue is suboptimal for that, and many people have voiced their opinions on that. Now, that said, you probably could fit all three elements on that site if you did not keep the railway piece there. And I've heard that was going to be dug up and moved, and somewhere else they were going to do sort of a historic site for that with the history of it. So that could probably be done. I think it would be effective. And then there's the Vincent Site, which is, you know, as he said, not a walking site, although I don't think it would be that far, really. It's not cumbersome. And then if we did get to that point, if this were to continue to mature as an operation, we would be looking at, you've already seen the costs, but there are a number of sites and properties within the town that could be sold that are either unutilized or underutilized or would no longer be required to help with that offset. In addition to something we're doing now with state and federal in seeking funds for the wastewater treatment plant, that same sort of infrastructure money would be sought for a new municipal building.
And if I can just comment, I think, again, they did a wonderful job on this. My continued personal belief is that Pennsylvania Avenue, that just the density of the parking situation now, there's just something, a lot of somethings about that I find it in my mind as being the last of the options out of the ones we were presented. And when I think about, okay, 10, 20 years from now, which of these sites, if we needed to do some sort of expansion, you know, there's an option. It just seems like we're going to be landlocked when we think about Pennsylvania Avenue. So, and then just a second point, and that is, I don't know that the town has any history, at least recently, in any kind of philanthropic naming opportunities, but I know what I would like to see, if the rest of the council agrees, is some sort of plan that we could start developing now that various rooms, spaces, et cetera, could be named after, you know, donors that make a certain value of a gift, and to have that sort of be poised and ready so that if we do get to a point where we think we want to pull the trigger on, you know, actually completing a project like this, that is an additional opportunity to potentially drive down cost. And I don't think we have sort of that in place now, so.
The cost is a rough order of magnitude. The major intent of this was to sort of assess what spaces is needed now.
Yes.
And then allow for growth in the future, so that this is not this is a 50-year building.
Yes.
You know, if you will, so that it allows for staff growth, it allows for, you know, other needs that might be there. We'd have our own council chamber. There'd be opportunities to, you know, do different things. And the cost is also a rough order of magnitude. You don't know what bids would be coming in and how they would do these things. So, I mean, look at the paint. We had one thing and it went, and then the new bids on the paint are significantly different.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving to the personnel manual. Crystal? Good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening. I apologize, the pollen seems to be taking over.
Here, here.
So if I lose my voice or start coughing, I apologize. So what you have before you, and I realize this is probably the easiest way for me to present the manual. It's more in sections, by section. As it becomes more final through being vetted through attorneys, being vetted through the town staff, department heads. But what you have before you right now is the welcome letter, which is just more of an additive. It wasn't, there wasn't one in there before. Disclaimer, table of contents, which is more of just cleaning it up, including everything so far that is going to be presented to you in the future. In the next session, when I bring more sections in, I'll be able to provide you with a table of contents update on certain topics to see, where we are with that. Right now, the section 1 is application and definitions. The definition items number 2 and 3 would require a charter amendment to provide uniformity with current town practices. The way that it's worded in the charter is not how it's been since I've been here, and probably since before I've been here. So just to align it with the current, with the town practices.
Crystal, for clarification, so you're saying under B definitions 2 and 3 would require a charter amendment?
Correct. Yes. Section 3 is just including the drug-free workplace, just to ensure that the town is compliant with federal, state, and local laws. Section 7, which would cover the equal opportunity and harassment, same, just to remain compliant. Adding social media in section 10, and it was a previously approved policy, so it's going to be referenced in this manual. So when the policies are approved by resolution, this is basically trying to codify it, adding it into the personnel manual officially. Section 11 goes over the information technology and mobile devices. As the town currently follows the county's policies, the section is included to reference the current policy. However, if the town council may want to have the town create their own policy in the future, and that's something we've been considering, but it's right now, because we have that relationship and connection with the county, we are following their, email administration policies. And then section 12 is a drug and alcohol policy, which is also previously approved and referenced in the manual. And then the receipt of the town of Centerville's personnel manual is just the acknowledgement of receipt. That's unchanged since the last update, but just including it in there as it's a finished draft. So, as the council reviews each section, if favorable, if you have any recommendations or any comments, anything of that nature, we'll just go through. You can let me know if any of those sections you have questions at all.
I do not.
No questions.
And I have just 2 quick things. So on page 14, under section 3, drug-free workplace, just a suggestion. I think that second full paragraph where it says no employee shall consume, display, or have in his or her possession, including the workplace or in town-owned vehicles, etc. I just feel like we should add beyond just workplace, any town of Centerville-owned property, something to that effect. Just because I feel someone's interpretation of workplace could be their primary place of work rather than whether or not they're consuming or possessing, such things.
So
Does
if
that
I
make
go to the
sense?
wharf instead of town hall, I'm okay, but
Exactly. Exactly.
So
I mean, I think we all understand.
Town-owned or town-owned facilities,
Correct.
property, yeah.
Something to that effect. And then just that last item was the third from the last paragraph at the bottom there that starts with when your analysis. So the final portion of that last sentence says, however, refusal to submit will result in immediate removal from service and may result in termination. So the concept that I'm hearing here is it will result in you're going to be gone for the day, and then the may is the actual termination. I just don't know the word service to me, and I know this is probably consistent with what the county has. I feel like we need to be specific there and say from their shift or whatever the.
From duty?
From duty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because to me, I could interpret service as my service to the town, my job, yeah. That's after looking at everything, those are the only two things I saw.
Okay. So, my goal is just to have, each section, or to approve each section first, and complete any required charter amendments through the appropriate process until final implementation. It's, I guess with, I don't know if there's any requirement or anything. I know as a whole, I know with any personnel manual changes is done by resolution. But at this time, if it's just more of, I don't know how we want to move forward with that. If it's, you're approving it by section.
The idea is to bring you the sections so that it's bite size, rather than dump the whole thing on you and say, we think this is ready for your review. Is go section by section, and council can decide if they want to sponsor specific sections, or one council member wants to sponsor the whole thing when we get to resolutions.
I think let's do it that way. Let's do
Yeah.
one charter amendment.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, as it is now, the policy manual is concordant with charter code, but not concordant with state. This change will make us concordant with state, and then we'll make the necessary adjustments locally that we're across the board where we need to be from an HR standpoint.
Sharon, can we do one charter amendment or do we have to break, because they're different sections, or it would be different sections?
It is more than one section? Because, then we would need two, but
We
we
need to
can do
do-
them at the same time and
Yeah,
process them together, just
Yeah.
two separate resolutions.
resolutions.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's all oh, yes, go
I
ahead.
apologize.
No,
I
it's
did
okay.
have one other thing, I just didn't make a note, and this is at the risk of a, can of worms, but it is very clear that when you look at page 46, section B policy, that we've got like every category there that you can think of, with a lot of the discussion right now, nationally, locally, on gender versus gender identity. I'm just curious from a legal standpoint and consistency with, other municipalities, other levels of government, is what we have probably enough? I'm just curious.
Our attorney with Legit has been looking at this and working with, it's a free service to us, and as we get deeper into it, we'll also have Sharon, but this is being worked with the legal minds looking at it as we go forward, so that we don't write something that may sound good to us, but won't pass muster.
Exactly.
But that's just certainly something I can bring to his attention as well.
Do you mind just asking that specifically? And I'm not necessarily for or against having gender identity included specifically, but just knowing how much of a hot button item that is, if there seems to be a wave of consistency on that with a lot of other municipalities and what Legit is hearing and seeing out in the
Right.
field, so.
And yes, no, I understand, and absolutely, I can certainly discuss it with him, because I have been working, more with the Legit employment law attorney and, sending Sharon, at least the versions as we're going through, so that at least she can be made aware, so she can see these and make comments if there is any. But I can certainly bring that up, and then I can let you know.
Thank you. I
You're
promise
welcome.
that's it.
Did anyone else have any comments, questions?
Bless you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Moving to the first reading of ordinance number 8-2022. And I'll just read the top of this. An ordinance for the purpose of adopting a budget for the town of Centerville for fiscal year 2023.
So you have a public hearing scheduled for the May 19th meeting for this. And so you have the public hearing, and then you can decide if you want to do a second reading or if you want to consider it at the May 19th, or second reading at May 19th and consider it the June 3rd, second meeting, however you want to do.
Thank you. Public hearing on May 19th.
May 19th.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Keel for Resolution 3-2022.
Make a resolution of the Town Council of Centerville to authorize the execution of the Public Works Agreement for the Queen Anne's County YMCA.
Folks have any conversation about this?
Nope.
I don't think I did.
Can we can move this tonight?
Yes, you can.
Does anybody have any conversation, or we can also accept a motion? I will make the motion to adopt Resolution 30-2022 as presented.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you. We will now move into reports of boards and commissions. Councilperson Kaiser is not here, so we will dispense with Maryland Municipal League and move right into economic development. Councilperson Johnson?
Yes, so I am in receipt of the Economic Development Manager's report, which, excellent, thank you. I don't want to say much about it if you're planning during the staff updates to say something, so I'll defer those comments. The only other thing I would mention is, as I indicated in our last meeting, I am working to organize a session wherein our town manager, our town economic development manager, and our Chamber of Commerce leader, Linda Friday, and our county level economic development director, Heather Tonelli, can speak to what I would theme as opportunity on the horizon, and things in terms of partnership, networking, looking at more external resource opportunities. This would not be a public event per se. We would invite, of course, this council to attend such a function, about an hour and a half. But beyond that, the attendees that would be invited would be our prior CETA members, some of our real estate agents and developers in the area, some business leaders, that sort of thing. So more to come on that, but I am looking at kind of an end of May date, and I'll coordinate with Chip and Paige on that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Park Advisory Board?
I have a couple updates for you guys. The overhead lights have been installed in the 3 new pavilions. The lights can be operated by a light switch, but if the lights are continuously left on, the switch will be changed to a dusk/dawn sensor. Yeah. 8-foot picnic tables will be bolted to the cement floor of each pavilion, and 6 trash cans will be placed in the park near the pavilions, along with 3 grills and trash bins. There's about $2,039 in the community parks and playgrounds funds to be used by July 1st. A wonderful thank you note, which I shared with all of you, was sent to the town by Miss Madeline Harrison, thanking the town and the Parks Advisory Board to the lovely Wharf Park, including a beautiful picture.
Cutest thing.
Very, very sweet. The PAB still has over $7,000 in their budget that could be used by the end of June. They're discussing possibly using it for an edible planting trail. Other suggestions were a daffodil box placed at Millstream, a large swing set suitable for a handicapped person or adults placed at each park, night lights placed along the boardwalk, or to create a new easel used to show and update people on the improvements of the wharf. The easels could be displayed at Drink Maryland, the QAC Fair, and Centerville Day. And then they're also looking into finding out if we have Christmas lights for decorating the wharf in December, and possibly using the funds for that. Also a note that the Arbor Day celebration, which was this past Friday, went very well. and that we will have a letter shortly to show our support for the QAC dog park. And I wanted to ask you all if you would like to sign them, or if you're okay with me forwarding it on to you and then signing it as I'm the park liaison. I could go either way. So I don't know if you guys have an opinion on that. If you'd like your signatures on the letter, or if you're comfortable with my
I would
signature.
not like my signature on the letter.
Okay. I will still forward it to all of you before I send it off. And then the only other note is the fire extinguishers at the end of the wharf park are non-functionable, and additional fire extinguishers should be placed at the wharf. And that is my update.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council of Governments.
Nothing. Meeting next Wednesday.
The Planning Commission met last night. I was not able to attend. I had to be across the bridge, but they are moving forward with working on the comprehensive plan refresh. I think they're sort of working double time to get that done. We put that to bed. I understand from the chairwoman Voigt that the session was productive and very good last night. So Planning Commission moving forward with comprehensive plan update. We'll move into reports of department heads. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. A good week, busy week. We had our kickoff session with Whitman Reckhart and Associates on the planning and design, the studies involved with the wastewater treatment plant. Very productive session. We talked about what they will need from the environmental study, and most of that can be done within a week's time. And they're prepared to go forward with that once we have secured an additional spray field. One of the most interesting parts of this conversation was trying to assess from an engineering standpoint what things are covered by Bay Restoration Fund, what things are covered by State Revolving Fund, and looking at that as I put it to their lead, what percentage of a blower takes us from basic nutrient removal to enhanced nutrient removal? How do we break down that thing? He gave me a few examples, and they're going to go through what they've enumerated in the preliminary engineering report to give us a better idea. And the ones I'll give you now, influence screening, none of that is covered. The denitrification, 100% covered. Solids, 50% covered, and sequential batch reactor, the tank's 0. Now, the denitrification, I was happy to see that, because that is the third most expensive thing after the field and the lagoon at $2.9 million, and that's 100% covered. So we're trying to kind of get an idea when the money comes in, how do we break this out? What additional bite from the apple do we want to take, and where are we going to take it from? If it's state revolving fund, what comes in with federal? So to kind of get an idea of really where the deltas were going to be within the funding, and get a better grip on that so that we can brief you on that so you understand really what we're asking for from whom. And as that clarifies, they're going to get us that list so that we can kind of take a better break at that. I am in the middle of editing a EDU correction letter. As I mentioned to you at the last session, we had some EDU calculations that were off to the tune of about $40,000 per year. We're correcting that. Well, the letter will be going out in the coming week to let the users know that we have been monitoring usage for 8 quarters, and that we will continue to monitor usage to fairly bill them for the resources they are using. Code enforcement, 16 new activities within the month of April, 12 have been closed. We have had a number of calls from both council members and from citizens at large regarding the mill. A structural engineer has been into the mill to look at that. We're waiting to see that report and talk to the owner. If you do ride by the mill and you go slow, which most people do, and looking at it and trying to assess it, past the fence, you'll know that he has done a great deal of cleanup back there, which we are most grateful for. And that was no small effort. There was, it looked like a junkyard, and he has really done a yeoman's effort in responding to the town's request. Specifically, we can't go onto the property, just say we're going to come in and inspect. We have to ask, and he has been very accommodating, so we're most grateful for that. Council President mentioned the comp plan. I met with Mr. Jakubiak, and we talked about where we are and what the glide path for that is to get that finished. You all are going to make some major decisions on major muscle movements for the town, and we're looking back at a 13-year-old plan. So the goal is going to be to bring the plan to you in the late September, early October timeframe for your assessment and your vote on whether or not to adopt it. So we're going to be very aggressive through June and July, or May and June, and then July and August, depending on how sessions go. We'll see what we can continue to get done, but the idea is that by fall, you all are looking at a new comprehensive plan. And then lastly, we had a number of discussions over the past 48 hours about the PWA for the YMCA and efforts under there, what will be done with Little Kidwell, the extension out to Vincent, and the Green Street extension. And what I would like to do is just go on record for the YMCA to be responsive to requests from the community there. There are a number of buildings that are going up there over the next couple of years, from Vincent already done, the YMCA, a potential new Board of Ed building. You're right on the backyard of a number of people for this town, and you're looking at dust and dirt and noise and different things, so that we would like anybody, but especially at this moment, the YMCA, to be good neighbors to the citizens here that you're joining our town, and to be mindful of that when you're going through, I don't want to call it disturbing in a negative way, but a disruptive undertaking, and be mindful of the community. When the community reaches out, be responsive. So with that, Mr. President, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you.
Real quick, if you don't mind, sir, I wanted to just note, just because you had just mentioned the YMCA, so I had a good conversation with Chip. I also had a conversation with Todd Mon and leadership from the Y, including Tony Sigmund, Vice President of Development. And what was great about the conversation was they are beginning conversations about participating in our First Friday events, also participating in other opportunities if we end up doing our council and the community events. And then my understanding is there's a groundbreaking that they're planning to have this month, and immediately following that, they want to follow the lead of Carter Farm folks and do an event similar to that. So what's good is I'm happy to report, at least from my bleacher seat, that they seem to be gearing up to do that. I don't think there's too much that the YMCA could do to make our residents happy. And then I did want to just note one other thing, because it's festering in the background. I had used the term traffic study to Tony Sigmund, their Vice President of Development, when I took a tour of the Chestertown Y this past week, which was awesome. By the way, if you haven't seen it, I highly encourage you. It's a great way to kind of get a visual of what we're going to get. If somebody takes you through to say, actually, we're getting 150% of this particular space, so imagine it bigger. But at any rate, at the end of our tour, I mentioned that, and it spooked the herd a little bit, if not a lot. So in my conversation with Todd Mon today, and Robbie and Tony, my suggestion is that, and I'm glad the chief's sitting here ready to gear up for his presentation, that we actually look at calling whatever we do as a operation or flow operational readiness assessment. We're not doing a formal traffic study that is something that could potentially affect, delay their construction timeline, all of that. Our understanding is that they have a couple $1 million in gifts that are contingent upon them finishing breaking ground by the end of this month. So I just wanted to state for the record, since there's some stuff moving around out there on social media, et cetera, that what we had talked about, as I recall, as a council several months ago, was looking at things like what the chief has already been able to gather in terms of traffic flow along the existing streets, and then our ability to follow up when the Y is open to see, what the actual impact has been. Do we need to add additional speed bumps, things like that? So just want to say that term one more time. Flow operational readiness assessment, not a formal traffic study. Just wanted to add that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Chief.
Good evening to all.
Hello.
So we are about a month and some change since we've put up the 2-hour parking signs on Lawyers Row, and based on the feedback of some town employees that I've spoken with, and citizens that I've spoken with, and police officers in the town that I've spoken with, the process seems to be pretty well received, and I think we've achieved our objective in kind of turning over parking in that area. So I'm very pleased with how that project has gone so far. I know initially we said we were looking at maybe a 60-day pilot, but I'm encouraged by what I have seen, and I would be prepared in the coming meetings to present to council a proposal to expand that 2-hour parking to other parts of the town. So just kind of bracing you for that. We received our invoice from Delmarva K9, and I'm encouraged to share that we came in $9,600 under budget for the complete upfitting of our second K9 unit. So we'd initially asked for $20,000, and we're going to turn back in $9,600. So very happy to share that news. And again, a thank you to St. Michael's Police Department for donating one of their K9 kennel units for our vehicle at no cost. So that was very nice. And then finally, I'm full of good news tonight. I was notified earlier this week that the town of Centerville and Centerville Police Department, in conjunction with our Main Street projects, we were received an award from the Department Community Safety Works program on the Community Safety Works grant that we had applied for $96,000 to improve some safety and security in our business district. So we were awarded the full amount that we had asked for, and I look forward to working with our Main Street manager and our town manager in coming weeks once we officially sign off on that grant to implement some products in our Main Street area that are going to keep our community safe, our visitors, and our businesses safe in that area. So, and I yield.
Any questions?
Thanks, Chief.
Thank
you all.
Thank you.
Town Attorney?
So as you know, at your next meeting, you have the Carter Farm Growth Allocation Public Hearing. They have requested to be on the Planning Commission agenda on the 18th, the day before your hearing, on their site plan review. And the staff think that that's a little bit premature, and there's a couple of reasons for that. You know, it is confusing. There's two processes going on. We've got the PUD process and we've got the growth allocation process. The PUD process, they do have town council conditional approval, and the next step is the site plan. But there's not two site plans in this, there's one site plan, and it needs to get far enough in the growth allocation process to be on the site plan as well. And so we thought it would be getting too far ahead of the council to go forward on the 18th. You know, you all are presumably going to have some conditions to this growth allocation. And to give you an example, there's some things you all could decide that would have a significant effect on the site plan. For instance, you might say, we don't want any commercial in this development. We're not going to approve it. Or we don't have allocations for commercial. We're not going to approve that. And that's the next thing they want to talk about with the Planning Commission. So we would spend 2 to 3 hours talking about what the commercial looks like and where it should be on the site, and you all might decide you don't even want commercial. So we just thought we didn't want to get ahead of you all. We thought it makes more sense to, I mean, I do think when the Critical Area Commission is reviewing, if you all do approve the growth allocation, maybe then they could start going through the Planning Commission, because then you'll at least have blessed the growth allocation, established conditions, and the critical area probably isn't going to have as big an effect on the site plan. But what you all do could. And so we just thought it makes more sense, and the language of the ordinance says after growth allocation, then you move forward with the site plan, and we'd like to follow that. So that would be the staff recommendation. Obviously, if you tell us it's okay, I mean, I realize they're willing to take that risk, but I think your staff resources are not unlimited, nor is your planning commissioner's times, and therefore we thought it makes sense to follow the process kind of that we established in the beginning. But
So this will be canceling the May 19th Planning Commission, or Town Council hearing?
no,
Okay.
that would say it would not be considering on the 18th the site plan review at the Planning
Planning
Commission.
Commission.
They would have to wait until after you all came to some kind of consensus on what that, if you're going to approve growth allocation, what that looks like, what those conditions are. and then they can revise their site plan accordingly. So I don't want to promise them a date and say, oh, well, you could do it in June, because you all might have some things that require them to change it before they come back.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's a good plan.
So, okay.
So that makes sense to me. Just a quick question then. So if on, and I'm gonna get my dates right this meeting. Here it is. If on the 19th we have the public hearing, what would the next, say, one or two things be after that that would be the staff's recommendation?
so the public hearing is for you all to hear from the public what their thoughts are on the growth allocation. But it's possible that you all still need to have some discussion among yourselves to try to get to what these conditions might be that would attach to the growth allocation. And whether you want to continue that public hearing because you want to hear what they say that night, talk about it some, and then give the public the opportunity to comment on the conditions or not, that's a possibility. Or, you know, you could just move forward. You know, at some point, I'm going to need direction. There's going to be an ordinance, and it's going to have findings related to growth allocation and potentially some conditions related to that. And so I'll need some direction and some consensus, and then we'll have to prepare it, and then we'll move forward with an ordinance like we normally would.
So if what I'm hearing, and then my recommendation to this council, just from my seat, would be let that play out then on the 19th, and maybe depending on how that public hearing goes, determine whether we want to provide that opportunity for additional feedback. And then at that point, look at, you know, ordinance planning.
And I think they are going to submit what they would propose the ordinance look like and what they would propose the conditions look like. But I would be shocked if they were exactly what you all decide.
Exactly.
So, you know, they'll have something that night. I don't think you'll be ready to introduce it. I think it'll require some modifications, would be my guess.
Well, and I just have to comment, this morning we had a very productive meeting, Chip and I and Carolyn, with Rebecca and Ernie from the Carter Farm Project, for those listening in at home. And just wanted to publicly recognize our staff, and that includes Sharon, even though she was not on this call, just in this issue in general, for always being prepared, always being productive, and efficient with time. And just wanted to say thank you for that.
Anybody else on Carter Farm? We don't have to do anything in terms of the Planning Commission's agenda. That's,
Planning Commission's calls their agenda.
right.
Yeah.
But I think perhaps we communicate to them that
Yeah.
the council thinks it makes sense to wait
Yes.
still.
If that's the council's desire. So one of the, without going too far off the track, last night's discussion on the comprehensive plan, one of the things I did broker with them was that there are a number of things you're looking at. Be sure that when you start drilling down, you don't get into specifics that removes council's leeway for their decision-making as the representatives of the town. So I think this falls under that if the council says, hey, we are still deliberating on certain aspects of this development, we're not ready for you to engage on this part for the town yet. We want to make our decision before we start chasing that rabbit that we're not quite ready to deliberate on. We want to see where we are first, make our decisions, and then you follow accordingly to the next steps in the process.
Is it normal operating procedure for developers to be in touch with individual Planning Commission members directly?
That was done at my recommendation. As you recall, there was the discussions at the thing was to say, rather than you come to town and say, you said this and you said that, I said, reach out, ask them specifically, what are we missing so that we can provide that. And then at the next Planning Commission meeting in a public forum, have these discussions on what the Planning Commission is asking for and thinks they have and don't have, and what the developer thinks they have provided or have not provided, vice going around in a circle and trying to go back and forth through staff to have that conversation. Let's get the discussion back where it needs to be at the Planning Commission in a public forum and not via email. Get that first understanding and get that done.
And if I could just piggyback on that and say, I had this opportunity to talk to some of you council members offline, and then Chip, and then we had this very deliberate conversation this morning with Rebecca and Ernie to say, in a perfect world, what emerges is a very short, simple document that is a task tracker, and it has what was requested, the date it was requested, the date by which we wanted it done, and when I say we, meaning the Planning Commission, and then its status. And I like the idea of calling the question formally on any item that the developer has not answered, where it's not so much a matter of they haven't answered it yet, but they have made a deliberate decision that they are not going to take the recommendation of the Planning Commission on a particular item. Not to say that that's what they're doing all over the place or whatever, but to the extent that I'm hearing that's part of the equation, I think we as a body and the Planning Commission deserves to know the open items, whether or not they are truly still working on that, or if they have deliberately said we're not going to do that. So
Yeah. I think to Sharon's point on the PUD, you get to a certain point where if that's given, that you surrender your options to then assess certain things. So for instance, in a site plan, what are the requirements for the signage in a commercial area? And if you've approved everything, they now have that blank check. But I think that we need to be, as we have said, first time with the DRA, first time with the PUD, that we need to be thoughtful and deliberate as we go forward as to what the town does as far as decisions. You know, what steps do we engage?
And I'm not trying to slow them down as much as just follow the process so that, you know, hopefully it never gets challenged, but we can say, here's what we did and here's why, and here's the language in the ordinance that we followed, and just trying to dot the i's, cross the t's.
Right.
And I do have a question just based on one of the things that came up this morning, and it was a good question, a timely question, and that is, we were very successful, and again, thanks to Chip on, herding this, lobbying the right folks for our wastewater treatment facility package. And our developers asked the question, is there anybody that as this packet is moving forward in the system for approval that we should be following up with to say, hey, just wanted to again let you know how much we really hope that you'll do this. So the question I have for this body is, I think we need to be very careful that we don't have folks, including ourselves, potentially calling elected officials or their staff members between now and October if there are time frames where that's like the worst possible time to call, or we have a recommendation that, you know what, we submitted all of our letters of support and that's it, we don't need to do anything, let's just sit back. So I just wanted to pose that. Steve, I know you have a background in that as well, so.
I was with Senator Cardin yesterday and brought up our CDS request with him and his staff, and I would encourage, anybody, no, there is not a time when lobbying is not effective, so I would be calling any chance you get or emailing, or if other interested stakeholders want to do that, they're welcome to as well.
The folks at Symphony Village had reached out and they plan to engage. They wrote a letter on behalf of the town requesting that be looked at in our application. We enumerated that the HOAs and how many citizens live within those neighborhoods were supporting this effort. I am hopeful that we'll see something. To give you an idea of the timeline, our request has already due. Certain other sections, for instance, security, IT, different areas when you break down within the budget have different timelines from the request. I think the final requests for congressionally directed spending are due at the end of May. So we may have an idea whether or not they're looking favorably upon ours, but I don't know how they'll rack it and stack it, or if they'll say, hey, we've completed infrastructure and water, and they can give us some kind of feedback. So I am maintaining contact with staffers to do that, and we'll continue to do so.
This will likely not play out on October timeline.
We should have a good idea what they're going to ask for as far as earmarks by then.
Yeah, it'll be an appropriations bill,
Yeah.
but those things will not be done.
No, the budget's never done on time, you know that, so it's
The only thing Congress is required by the Constitution to do, and they can't do it, so. Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Finance Officer?
Just wanted to let you know that I have submitted our first ARPA Treasury report to the Treasury that was due April 30th. We have to do it once a year. We have spent approximately $500,000. We still have some encumbrances and a little over 800 left that's not encumbered, but that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I did mention earlier that the budget ordinance public hearing is next week, but we're required to have a public hearing for the constant yield as well, so that will also happen.
Excuse me. Director of Public Works?
Good evening.
How are you?
Hello.
Very well, thank you. So, the staff's been very busy along with their normal day-to-day routine. We've got several projects in the work. The first thing is meter replacement program that's we were hoping to kick off on Monday, but it looks like the vendor or the contractor is going to do this on the 16th, the following Monday. It's going to be in Symphony Village for this first phase, replace about 150 meters. Because of the shortfalls due to the supply chain issues and everything, there will be another phase that we hope to complete the town in October or November sometime, depending on how the meter orders come in. Meters are ordered and everything, but the delivery dates right now are looking like September and October for them. So we'll see how that goes. One of the other things you may remember we talked about, and it's in the capital budget, to add a fourth gateway antenna, which reads the water meters and supplies all the information right to the staff in the office, rather than somebody having to go out and drive by or physically touch the antenna to read it, or pull the lid off and physically read it. So this fourth antenna will be in the area out around Symphony Village somewheres. We're also in discussions with them to try and make this as inintrusive as possible for them. But this is needed to pick up that area. One of the things that this is working towards is the possibility of monthly billing for the utility bills. The other thing is possibly at some point getting the portal where the customer can go in and look at their actual real-time use, as well as look at usage history. So it's all stepping in that process, and we're working towards it. So,
Do folks generally want to pay, prefer to pay on a monthly basis?
I've heard it both ways. So I can't really answer that. It seems about half and half. But for the most part, everybody understands that with a monthly billing, a monthly third of a bill is far more easier to budget for than a bill that comes once every 3 months. And that seems to be mainly the general consensus of it.
That's the feedback that I'm getting on the street is predominantly, gosh, I'd love to be able to pay it monthly.
There's also great enthusiasm for being able to see the details.
Yes.
And people ask, well, why did I get billed this, or something's not right? And even I learned that, hey, you'd be amazed what a toilet flap will cost you. That there's a lot of water flowing through that thing if it's broken or falling apart or things of that nature. So there has been positive feedback on that, and this telemeter, the ability to read from a telemeter to outpost will greatly enhance our ability to do these things.
And can you both confirm that if we do monthly billing, that we have the technology to show year over year, kind of like what we get on our Delmarva Power bills?
That all depends on the utility billing system, which is a separate segment to this. That's the portion. We started all this several years ago with replacing the meters to the newer technology so that we can move in that direction. So we're not quite to that part yet. I think it's very close, and we'll see something in the coming year, investigating something to that effect as far as the utility billing system and how it works. And it's evolving all the time, but we're moving in that direction.
We had a meeting with the provider this past week. Was it this week or last week?
Yeah, this week.
It was a busy week. That we're flipping the rocks over to see, okay, tell us about your software. What's the benefit you can bring to us, particularly the utility billing part. As what you're asking is that ability for that to marry to our existing infrastructure or enhance our existing infrastructure from a IT standard to make sure that we can optimize the billing process from clicking on the button to pay your bill to being able to look at your account and assess that. So
We need a little more sophistication to go to monthly, I think, than what,
yeah, there are options out there. We're exploring, seeing what the costs are, and then kind of breaking down the cost and seeing, for instance, we've discussed some municipal software, which if we were a county would be great, but it would be overkill for us to purchase it. So we're trying to find that happy medium that benefits the town.
So we're trying to make all this work so that in the end, both systems are completed out at the same time, and the hope is to make it all work then. So, the next thing, you may be aware or seen the activity out at the end of Courseville Drive. Lot E1 construction of the flex warehouse facility that they're doing there. They've been working on the extension of Courseville, putting the utilities in. They got the sanitary sewer line and there's installed this week. We've had it inspected very rigorously and they're doing a good job. Very good to work with, and any comments we make, they're very accommodating and everything.
Are they building that on spec, or is that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. And it's designed as, like I said, a flex warehouse space, office warehouse type thing. So
I'm curious about solar infrastructure on top of these major warehouse spaces, because, as folks may know, we are in the process of covering up some of our most productive topsoil in the counties here with solar panels. Mm-hmm. And yet we have, collectively acres and acres of these empty roofs of these big warehouses. Mm-hmm. And as we see sort of retailers shift to this model, as more of this is coming, it just seems like we ought to be thinking about, frankly, a requirement that these things be built with renewable energy in mind, whether it's for their own production or providing that power back to the grid. You would assume that a flex warehouse is not going to be using a ton of energy. It just strikes me as something we might want to think about.
Yeah.
As we build.
And it's not just rooftops, parking lots.
Yeah.
That has always been one of my thoughts. I've seen it many places before where they're covering the parking lots.
Chesapeake
with
College,
raised.
yeah.
Chesapeake College. The first place that I saw was Camp Lejeune Marine Base. That was the first place I ever saw it, and it's like, why isn't anybody else working towards this kind of thing? But yes, you're right. So, moving on, we're working on the I&I study. We brought you that before and talked about it. Sensors have been deployed. We're about roughly a week and a half out to the end of that. The weather is unfortunately starting to cooperate with us. We've got some rain here recently, more rain forecasted, I believe, starting tomorrow through the weekend, and it's going to be enough. The vendor tells us they're getting good, reliable data, and it seems to be working well. They think they've got us a good study going on here. So.
Good for I&I, bad for Little League.
Yes, absolutely.
Something I want to add to what Kim said, so everybody knows, that particularly the public, that rain we had 2 weeks ago, we got about 2.5 inches of rain. It took the plant 4 days to recover from a biological perspective, so that it was properly treating stuff and we weren't having to dilute in the lagoon. So I want people to understand the kind of impacts that a rainfall, and they're talking about possible flooding from the county, the weather report we got, at least a 1/2 inch of rain coming, possibly more, that there's an impact to the town in our plant when these things happen. And Connolly and those guys attack it, but it takes them a while to get that biology right.
And but my hats are off to them, because there's a lot of overtime hours spent working on that. It's not just they come in for 8 hours and can go home. There's times that they take shifts because the plant has to be, you have to babysit it. That's all it comes down to. It takes a lot of hands-on tweaking to keep everything running. I can't say enough good about the staff. Other than it would be nice if we had a few more staff members. We're still short 2 staff as far as operators. So they're working pretty hard and keeping up with it.
Will they have an app when we upgrade?
Well,
they can just sit at home on their app and.
It's not quite. I'll put it this way: I won't let them have an app. They'll have the app that says you have to come in.
You have to come in.
It doesn't say you can sit there.
My kind of boss.
And I hope you know that I don't leave them by themselves either. There's times I'm in there with them also, but yep.
You're not on the app either. You're there.
I get the alarms like they do, so I know. Had the pleasure this week of giving Queen Anne's County Commissioner Steve Wilson, County Administrator Todd Mon, and Public Works Director Alan Quimby a tour of the wastewater treatment plant. So they got to see everything. The technology is different than what the county has. It's a different process and everything. It's still wastewater, but so they understand the workings of it, but they also saw the condition of the plant and everything. So
what would you say the commissioner's reaction was to all that?
His reaction, he was very pleased, very excited to see it, saw the, I guess the short ends of it with the technology and some of the shortfalls with some design problems, and also understands and saw that, plant of that age, the technology has changed so much since then. Who else? The one way I explained it to him is, who has a car or a truck or anything like that they bought in 2003 and drove it 24 hours a day, and expected it to operate perfectly that entire time. And just a funny comment, Todd Mon happens to have a 2002 vehicle that he uses. But he doesn't drive it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So all in all, they were, I think they saw the need. And they were pleased to be able to put eyes on it and get the information. So,
thank you for doing that.
Certainly, no problem. Hopefully within the next month, you'll see Public Works staff in new uniforms and standing out with their Class 3 high visibility shirts and everything. Sometimes that's a good thing to be seen, other times it's a target. So we'll hope for the best. Next thing, just found out today, actually late yesterday afternoon, Talkie Fiber is getting ready to run a trunk line through Centerville. They have a permit from State Highway to run down 213 from 305 to 301, and we're working in the process to getting them their permit through the town, since not all of their boring and underground work will be within state highways. Some of it's going to be in utility easements outside of that. So,
Down 305, so
from 305 on 213 to 301. So it's going to, I haven't seen the construction drawings yet to know Liberty Street, Commerce Street. I don't know if their plan is to just connect, point A to point B, but I would imagine this allows them to do the tie-ins in between at some point also.
So to potentially be able to serve the entire town.
I think the potential's there with that trunk through there, but I can't speak for them. So
okay.
We next meeting be bringing a brief to you. We put a request for bids out for removal of the biosolids at the wastewater plant. Unfortunately, there's only one contractor anywhere's even close that is permitted and licensed for all that. They gave us a very respectable bid, so we'll be updating you on that next month, next meeting, I'm sorry. So, and that's all I have, unless you have questions.
Any questions? No. Thank you very much.
Yep. Have a good evening.
HR manager? We good? There's more.
There's, yeah, just really brief, because I'm surprised Kip didn't give that update, but we do have a new employee starting for the streets division on May 24th, and we also have another one currently in background. So we are slowly but surely trying to get through and hiring staff as quickly as possible. But other than that, yes, sir.
On that note, and for Kip's team, Chip's heard this as well. I'm hoping you've heard it too as our HR manager, but Daniil, our project manager in Public Works, have heard some phenomenally positive things about her being just spot on, and we could not have picked a better project manager. That's coming from the community, some partners that have also met. So just wanted to mention
absolutely.
that.
No, we've been very pleased. I know Kip's been very happy, and I know that I've been very grateful too as well, just through the hiring process as well. I know that Kip's administrative staff has been helping just go through some of these applications with me. They've been kind of handling the scheduling of the interviews, and that way I can focus on getting the backgrounds done, and we can just keep moving it along. So it's been a team effort, and I've been very, very fortunate. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Town clerk?
I just have two quick things. I heard back today from Maryland State Archives on our retention schedule. The first thing that was said is that it was submitted on February 8th. It has now been put in the queue for review. So, and the forms that I used to send it in were old forms. Well, they were what was used in 2013 when I started it, but when we get our feedback and if there's any changes, then I'll resubmit it on the new forms. So, so it at least is starting, and I'm happy about that. And then just been doing, Carol's she's got me busy doing updates on the web, so I've been doing a lot of that. Yes, lately, just updating some stuff. So that's all I can think about right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move into our second citizens forum.
Oh, real quick, I apologize. Were we able to
Yeah.
hear from?
Can we get, actually, both of them would like actually have a quick report.
Sure. Main Street and Economic Development. Good evening.
Thank you, Eric, because it went right.
I'll go first because I have something quick, and that's the farmer's market. Just wanted to report on what their plans are this year, and I wanted to start off by there's two fabulous volunteers who've really been taking the reins to organize operationally the market, and I'll do them in alphabetical order because they're both awesome. So Lee Bridgman and Jennifer Moore have been taking the reins, working with, they divided the farmer's market manager position to an operational one and a marketing one. So they've been teasing that out. The farmer's market will start on Sunday, May 15th. They are sticking with the Sunday schedule. It'll be every week though, and it'll be 9 a.m. to noon. They are going with a 23-week schedule, so it'll be from May 15th to October 9th, and they're planning a special holiday market on November 13th. This year, they applied for a grant. Last year, I facilitated a micro grant, an ag micro grant, and they took it upon themselves this year. They were awarded $2,250. It's mostly going to be in the area of advertising. Their fiscal sponsors are Queen Anne's County Economic Development and Tourism Office and Queen Anne's Advocates for Youth organization, because they needed a nonprofit to sponsor them for that. And the emphasis of the grant will be to kind of reach vulnerable populations, seniors, minorities, and the rural areas outside of town, so to market the market to those areas. They would formally like to invite you to a ribbon cutting, which will be that first opening. The market's going to open at 9, so they're thinking sometime between 9:15 and 9:30, and I will, of course, follow up with you on that and give you some more information as far as vendors and things like that. Does anybody have any questions?
So 9:15 to 9:30 on May 15th would be.
For the ribbon cutting, yep.
Good, and I would just like to say that I have filed a report, basically just with the activity that we've had. GTI's expansion is going well. Some of you had a chance to tour that facility. We're going to tour up line up a second tour probably in a week. So I'll let you all know if anyone would like to come through that. And Ash and Amber will be expanding to another, beside them, another unit. So that business is going well. But mostly I wanted to thank you for letting me represent you at the Maryland Economic Development Association Conference in Cambridge. It was April 25th, 26th. And Sunday kicked off with a tour of the Phillips Cannery, which was supported by the Eastern Shore Land Conservancy. It was very well received. It's a great project for us town to take on and all that they've accomplished there. The Maryland Economic Development Association is about 500 people strong throughout the state of Maryland that work on attracting employment, investment, capital investment, and growth. The conference is always a highlight for the people who do this kind of work, and we always hear from Annabon Basu. I'm sure you hear him at MACO and MLLA. This session, the theme is James Bond, and I have the slides, so if you'd like to have them, I can get them printed out for you. But all of the Maryland departments were represented, and Mike Gill has now taken the seat again as Kelly Schultz is running in the Republican primary. So Mike Gill was there from the Department of Commerce. We had a couple of very good keynotes. We had an interesting session with the regional councils. You know, the state has allotted $10,000 to each of our regional councils, and there was a lot of interest for Cecil, Kent, and Queen Anne to come together on a project that the county's been talking about, which is a feasibility study on re-engaging some ferry service to promote some of these towns on the water. So I'm not sure where our regional council will choose to put its emphasis, but that may be one area to watch.
We are the Upper Shore Regional Council, right?
Correct.
Just had some turnover. They've got a pretty new CEO,
No,
is that?
Susan Neal has been there for
About 4 years.
4 or 5 years now.
okay.
But I think you all are invited to attend as elected officials, and it's an interesting place for resource you may want to, stay tapped into. That's pretty much all I have. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to you ladies.
I know there's yellow.
We will now move into our second citizens forum. Any citizens that would like to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, let the record reflect such. We'll move into council roundtable, starting with Councilperson Johnson.
As we've talked about in the past, and for those that are at home that may not have heard this term, we're going to be engaging council in the community events where outside of our sessions here in this building on Thursday nights twice a month, we will host sessions, and I have the list finalized. Over the next 5 months, I'll be scheduling opportunities in the community for Northbrook at the community church across from 213, for Centerville Heights at the Methodist Church, downtown at the library, Providence Farm at Kennard Elementary School, and Symphony Village at their clubhouse. So no dates and times to present yet, but again, the hope is that when we have these dates and times to present to the council, that we will push for at least 2 of us to attend each of these. And excuse me, let me correct myself, not each of these, but ideally if each council member could attend 2 of these sessions, and we have hopefully at least 2 of us at each. So more to come on that. Unfortunately, as most everybody has heard, First Friday tomorrow has been canceled. We did make that decision preemptively in light of the inclement weather that has been consistently expected to be really bad. So, and then I did hear, and we're not going to talk about it tonight at length, but the bids that came in for the municipal building cosmetic improvements, as soon as we're ready to talk about that, I'd like to help push that. And that's all I have this evening.
Councilperson Ann and I.
Nothing to report.
Vice President Keel.
Nothing to report.
I will just take a moment to make a personal plea to anybody who might be watching on camera or listening later tomorrow or whenever you do, please join us at these meetings. The room here is void of anybody from the interested public, and we are making important decisions related to any number of things, Carter Farm, municipal building, you name it, and we are doing it in a vacuum of public input. So whether it's an email, letter, come attend, speak to our public sessions, we are desperate for your input.
Hear, hear.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.